and we are on chapter 13, which is entitled Understand the Negro. Understand the Negro, Carter G. Woodson, The Miseducation of the Negro. Chapter 13. We do not offer here any course in Negro history, Negro literature, or race relations, recently said a professor at a Negro college. We studied the Negro along with other people. An excellent idea, an interviewer replied. No one should expect you to do any more than this, but how you do it when the Negro is not mentioned in your textbook except to be condemned. Do you, a teacher in a Negro school, also condemn the race in the same fashion as the writers of your textbooks of history and literature? No, he said, we bring the Negro in here and there. He often does, here and there, connote. Well, he said, Negroes have not done much, and what they have accomplished may be briefly covered by referring to the achievements of a few men and women. When do you emphasize, or why do you emphasize the special study of the Negro? Said he further, why is it necessary to give the race special attention in the press, on the rostrum, or in the classroom? This idea of projecting the Negro in the foreground does the race much harm by seeing continuality of his woes and problems, and thus alienating the public, which desires to give its attention to other things. It is true that many Negroes do not desire to hear anything about their race. A few whites of today will listen to the story of woe. With most of them, the race question has been settled. The Negro has been assigned to the Lord's drudgery as the spirit in which the masses must toil to make a living, and socially and politically the race has been generally proscribed. Inasmuch as the traducers of the race have settled the matter of this fashion, then naturally oppose any efforts to change the status. Many Negro professional men who are making a living attending to the affairs of these laborers and servants in their mentally undeveloped state, and many teachers who in conservative fashion are instructing their children to maintain the status quo antebellum. Antebellum also oppose any movement to upset this arrangement. They are getting paid for their efforts. Why should they try innovations? The gods have so decreed it. Human beings cannot change. Why be foolish? A Negro with sufficient thought to construct a program of his own is undesirable. I'm going to say that again. A Negro with sufficient thought to construct a program of his own is undesirable. Not only to his own people, but to the feds themselves. And the educational systems of this country generally refuse to work through such Negroes in promoting their cause. The program for the uplift of the Negroes in this country must be handed over to an executive force like orders from the throne, and they must carry it out without question or get out of line and let the processions go on. Although the Negro is being daily forced more and more by segregation into a world peculiarly his own, his unusually perplexing status is given little or no thought, and he is not considered capable of thinking for himself. The chief difficulty for the education of the Negro is that it has been largely imitation, resulting in the enslavement of his mind. Somebody outside of the race has desired to try out a Negro's some experiment which interested him and his co-workers, and the Negroes, being objects of charity, have received them cordially and have done what they have required. In fact, the keynote in the education of the Negro has been to do what he is told to do, not what he has learned. but what he is told to do basically has been the education of black people here in America. And even this takes places on jobs. If you are a teacher, a great example of this, when I was teaching children in school, I had to do what I was told versus teach a different part or separate from the curriculum, which gave the student more brains. I couldn't do that. Actually got wrote up for that. Really didn't get wrote up, but had a verbal disciplinary action toward my work ethics, which were actually just teaching the kids. But you can't teach the kids if the programming is going against the programming that you are programming them for. I'm just saying. Now here, you have the keynote in education of the Negro has been to do what he is told. Any Negro who has learned to do this is well prepared to function in the American social order as others would have him. Looking over the courses of study of the public schools, one finds little to show that the Negro figures in these curricula. In subliminary matter, a good deed of some Negroes is occasionally referred to, but often the race is mentioned only to be held up to ridicule, with the exception of a few places like Atlantic City, Atlanta, Tulsa, St. Louis, Birmingham, Knoxville, and the states of Louisiana and North Carolina. No effort is made to study the Negro in the public schools as they do the Latin, the Teuton, or the Mongolian. Several miseducated Negroes themselves contend that the study of the Negro by children will bring before them the race problem prematurely, and therefore urge to the study of the race be deferred until they reach an advanced work in the college or university. These misguided teachers ignore the fact that the race question is being brought before black and white children daily in their homes, in the streets, through the press, and on the rostrum. How then can school ignore the duty of teaching the truth while these other agencies are playing up falsehood? The experience of college instructors show that racial attitudes of the youth are not easily changed after they reach adolescence. I'm going to say that again. The experience of college instructors show that racial attitudes of the youth are not easily changed after they reach adolescence. Although students of this advanced stage are shown as fallacy of race superiority and the folly of social distinctions, they nevertheless continue to do the illegal thing of still looking upon these despised groups as less worthy than themselves and persist in treating them accordingly. Teachers of elementary and secondary schools giving attention to this interracial problem have succeeded in softening and changing the attitude of those children whose judgment has not been hopelessly warped by the general attitude of the communities in which they have been brought up. Damn! In approaching this problem in the fashion to counteract the one-sided education of the youth, the thinking people of this country have no desire to upset the curricula of the schools or to force the Negro as such into public discussion. But if the Negro is to be elevated, he must be educated in the sense of being developed from what he is, and the public must be enlightened as to think of the Negro as a man. Wow, weren't we men before, like we were enslaved? Weren't we like kings and queens before we were slaves in the European transatlantic slave trade? I'm just saying. Were we not the authors and fathers of civilization? But yet they say that we were not a man. And I guess after having almost 300 years of being beaten in your head to death, whipped to death, chained to death, raped to death, and destroyed by horses in front of your wife and your children, I guess that is enough to make you go bonkers or to lose your common sense, especially when you are in a social cesspool that's going downward, not up for you. And even those so-called educated Negroes, as Carter G. Woodson has been talking about in this great book entitled The Miseducation of the Negroes, these Negroes have not been able to pull the masses up out of the gut and rut that they are in. Only two were almost successful. That was Marcus Garvey, and the other was Elijah Muhammad. And even then, with those two, they found some type of way to destroy them. Despite the fact that the movement that they had was for your benefit in some ways. I can't say in all ways, but in some ways they were, versus us or them then, our, I would say, your aunts, because they're still around from the 60s. Your grandmother's still around from the 60s. What were their plight in the fight for the upliftment of black people? And when you ask them these questions, you will be amazed at the answers that you will get. Most black people did not follow Marcus Garvey. Most black people did not follow Elijah Muhammad. Most black people did not follow any movement that was for the upliftment of black people. Most black people remained Christians, stupefied, suckered out down to the bone. Suckered out down to the bone with cracker jack nigger shit like Christianity. Because it gave you an illusion of a white man who was supposed to have been your savior, despite the fact that it has been the white man that, according to most black people, has been the cause of their demise and the stunt of their growth. But yet you're going to send someone that's looking like your oppressor to save you. I just find that to be idiocracy. But you can't tell those who've been brainwashed. If your God or your Savior looks like your oppressor, I think that you may want to get another God or another Savior. 100. You can go around cultures of nations of people, and you can't find them worshiping something that don't look like them. Not for the wise people anyway. I'm just saying. And most of those cultures have actually destroyed or remade, re-emulated that which they truly represent as far as worship status. Because if black people were the first teachers and preachers, we were the first teachers and preachers, and yet we are still just teachers and preachers. But we were also astrologers. We were also scientists. We were also mathematicians. We were the authors of history, and now we've just been reduced to a what? You think about that. The miseducation of the Negro. A further examination of their curricula shows, too, that invariably these Negro colleges, after courses in Greek philosophy and in that of modern Europe thought, but they direct no attention to the philosophy of the African. Negroes of Africa have always had their own ideas about the nature of the universe, time and space, about appearance and reality, and about freedom and necessity. Isn't that something I just said before I even started reading this particular paragraph? I'm just saying. The effort of the Negro to interpret man's relation to the universe shows just as much intelligence as we find in the philosophy of the Greeks. There were many Africans who were just as wise as Socrates. You know why there were many Africans just as wise as Socrates? Because Socrates stole, the Greeks stole the history of the great Africans and labeled themselves to be, as such, the philosophers of history. Do you know how long it would have took Socrates to write all of those values in the annals of history in regards to being a philosopher of Kemet and of the world, when the Greeks didn't have any alphabet that they could really relate to? Who do you think taught them how to read and write, really, a language, a real language? We taught them phonetic language. Well, yeah, they talked and we spoke. I mean, they talked and we wrote. They talked and we wrote. This is after the fact that we had established our own writing, reading. Hell, we was the first people to have papyrus, meaning paper to write on, which we did. Check the scrolls of the ancients. A prime example of this would be the statue of Imhotep. That's right. In fact, Imhotep, the black man, is the father of medicine. But they teach you what? The miseducation of the Negro. Why they didn't teach you about Imhotep being the first black medicine scientist, according to even their own history? To their own history. Comes from a black scientist, a black doctor, a black scribist, a black priest, Imhotep. Not for the more science temple. No, Imhotep. Forget all of the more science stuff. Just Imhotep. I don't think Imhotep called himself a member of the more science temple. No, he was in Kemet. I'm just saying. AKA the Greek name, which is Egypt. So Kemet is Egypt, okay? Again, one observes in some catalogs numerous courses in art, but no well-defined course in Negro or African art which they are influenced, which early influenced that of the Greeks. Thinkers are now saying that the early culture of the Mediterranean as chiefly African. Wow. Most of these colleges do not even direct special attention to Negro music, in which the Negro has made his outstanding contribution in America. The unreasonable attitude is that because the whites do not have these things in their schools, the Negro must not have them in theirs. The Catholic and the Jews, therefore, are wrong in establishing special schools to teach their principle of religion, and the Germans in America are unwise in having their children taught their mother tongue. Do you dig that? Slap, slap, slap. Such has been the education of Negroes. They have been taught facts of history, but have never learned to think. Damn. I hope y'all got that. I want to read that one more time. Such has been the education of the Negroes. They have been taught facts of history, but have never been learned to think. Their conception is that you go to school to find out what other people have done, and then you go out in life to imitate them. What they have done can be done by others. They contend, and they are right. They are wrong. However, in failing to realize that what others have done, we may not need to do. I'm just saying, there comes a time when you have to upgrade your thinking. Would you rather take a bucket of bricks on a wagon cart, or would you rather carry them in a pail? I'm just saying. Hey, what they have done can easily be done by others. If we are to do identically the same thing from generation to generation, we will not make any progress. If we are to duplicate from century to century the same feats the world will grow tired of such a monotonous performance. In this particular respect, Negro education is a failure. It is dastardly so, because it present the predicament the race is especially that is in need of vision and invention to give humanity something new. But what do we give humanity? As a people, you say, well, Mo, we gave the humanity birth. We gave birth to civilization. We were the first teachers. We were the first everything. But now look at us. What have we done? Well, there was great reason why we haven't done anything, because we've been under such, as some would say, tyranny, white supremacy, which has slowed down our progress in every way imaginable. That's not even up for debate. Even white people out there know that I'm right about that fact. In this particular respect, Negro education is a failure. Not only do the needs of generations vary, but the individuals themselves are not duplicates the one of the other. And being different in this respect, their only hope to function efficiently in a society, one or the other, is to know themselves and the generation which they are to serve. The chief value in studying the records of others is to become better, acquainted with oneself and with one's possibilities to live and to do in the present age. I swear I'm repeating this book before I read it. I'm talking about it before I read it, not repeating it, I'm sorry. As long as Negroes continue to restrict themselves to doing what they are doing, as long as Negroes continue to restrict themselves to doing what was necessary 100 or 1,000 years ago, they must naturally expect to be left out of the great scheme of things as they concern men of today. Meaning we have to catch up. Meaning that we have to step our game up tremendously. Meaning that, just think, if the store on your corner went out of business today, or just up and left, what would people in your neighborhood do for a store? I'm just saying. The romance, yes, the romance, we'll get to that. The most inviting field for discovery and invention then is the Negro himself, but he does not realize it. Frederica Bremer, when reflecting upon her visit to America about 1850, gave this country a new thought in saying to Americans, the romance of your history is the fate of the Negro. In this very thought lies unusual possibilities for the historian, the economist, the artist, and the philosopher. Why should the Negro writer seek a theme abroad when he has such the greatest of all home? The bondage of the Negro brought captive from Africa is one of the greatest dramas in history. And the writer who merely sees in that ordeal something to approve or condemn fails to understand the evolution of the human race. Negroes now studying dramatics go into our schools to reproduce Shakespeare, but mentally developed members of this race should see the possibility of a greater drama in the tragedy of the man of color. Negroes graduated from conservative Tories of music dislike the singing of our folklore songs. For some reason, such misguided persons think that they can improve on the productions of the foreign drama or render the music of other people better than they can themselves. A knowledge of real history will lead one to think that slavery was one of the significant developments which, although evil in themselves, may redound sometimes to the advantage of the oppressed rather than that of the oppressor. Someone has said that in the music of Poland, was inspired by incidents of a struggle against the despots invading and partitioning of their prostrate land. The Greeks never had an art until the country was overrun by hostile Orientals. I'm going to say that again. The Greeks never had an art. The Greeks never had an art until the country was overrun by hostile Orientals. Damn! Did you know that? I'm just saying. Damn. Anyway, another carved in marble, the thought evoked by the example of the Greek youth who blocked the mountain pass with his body or who bared his breast to javelin to defend the liberty of his country. These things we all cart in our own country, the other elements of the population being secure in their position has never faced such a crisis, and the Europeans, after whose pattern American life is fashioned, have not recently had such an experience. White Americans then thus have produced no art at all, and Europe has reached the point of stagnation. Negroes who are imitating whites then are engaged in a most unprofitable performance. Why not interpret themselves anew to the world? If we had a few thinkers, we could expect great achievements on tomorrow. Some Negroes, wow, I'm going to say that again. If we had a few thinkers, we could expect great achievements on tomorrow. Some Negroes with unusual insight will write an epic of bondage and freedom which could take its place with those of Homer and Virgil. Some Negro with aesthetic appreciation will construct from collected fragments of Negro music a grand opera that would move humanity to repentance. Some Negroes of philosophic penetration would find a solace for the modern world in the soul of the Negro, and then men would be men because they are men. The Negro in this present plight, however, does not see possibilities until it's too late. He exercises much hindsight, and for that reason he loses ground in the hotly contested battles of life. The Negro, as a rule, waits until a thing happens before he tries to avert it. He is too much like a man whom the author once saw knocked down in a physical combat. Instead of dodging the blow when it was being dealt, he arose from his prostration dodging it. For example, the author has just received a letter from a lady in Pittsburgh complaining that the librarian in one of the schools insists upon reading to the children a great deal of literature containing such words as nigger, blackie, little black Sambo, etc. This lady, therefore, would like to place in that school some books by Negro authors. This is a commendable effort, but it comes a little late. We hope not too late, that is. For centuries, such as literature has been circulated among the children of the modern world, and they have therefore come to regard the Negro as inferior. Now that of our similarly miseducated Negroes are seeing have they been deceived on how they have been deceived. They are awakening to address themselves to a long neglected work. They should have been thinking about this generations ago, for they have a tremendous task before them today in dispelling this error and counteracting the result of such bias in our literature. This has just come from a friend of humanity in Edinburgh School, Scotland. A direful account of the increase in race prejudice in those parts. Sailors who frequented the stronghold of race prejudice in South Africa undertook recently to prevent Negro men from socializing with Scotch women at a dance, and certain professors of universities of Edinburgh with the same attitude showed so much of it with their teaching that this friend entreats us to send them informing books on the Negro, we are doing it. Here again, however, the effort to uproot error and popularize the truth comes rather late. The Negro, since freedom, has gone along grinning, whopping, and cutting capers, while the white man has applied himself to the task of defining the status of the Negro and compelling him to accept it as dust settled forever, keeping you in check. Why? Because you won't even move yourself out of check. Sadly, and the queen on the black end of this board has done her part. But where are you, black man, finding it a little too late? Finding it a little too late. Yes, there's reasons that we have had some setbacks. We all understand the historical reasons for that. But seeing that we are in 2023, we're not in 1865, we're not in 1921, we're not in 1914, we are in 2023 and have the richest Negroes, black people here on the planet in America that there has ever been since the history of the white America, and we still have nothing for ourselves. Here again, however, the effort to uproot error and popularize the truth comes rather late. Yeah, I had to specify that. While the Negro has been idle, propaganda has gone far ahead of history. Unfortunately, too, Negro scholars have assisted in the production of literature which gives this point of view. That's all I'm saying. And that is chapter 13, you all. The Miseducation of the Negro. I hope you all got some out of it. Hey, I was supposed to do this maybe 2 days ago. I've been having some life complications. However, go over and check out the Mo Show Chicago. We put up like 25 videos up there the other day. But for the rest of the week, we will be doing plenty of uploads on this channel in the commemoration for black people who have sacrificed their lives for us to be in the situation that we're in, which is a sad one. You just wait till I get on this. Watch out for the uploads. Tomorrow we're going to have stupid uploads. To be aware is to be alive. Thanks for viewing, you all. It's your brother, the MOPOWERZ, where knowledge is power. Remember, it is your third eye that makes you shine like jewelry. And if you haven't checked out the other 12 chapters of the Miseducation of the Negro, go over to the live section of the channels. So from 13 to 17, they will just be uploads, okay? The Miseducation of the Negro. Thanks for viewing, you all. And never ever give up on your dreams. Peace out.